My world had shrunk down to the size of a one-bedroom apartment that always smelled faintly of damp and desperation. It wasn't always this way. I remembered a time when my world was as wide as the sky, filled with the warm, sweet scent of baking bread and the sound of my husband Mark's easy laughter. We had a little bakery, the Rolling Pin, and it was our everything. It was more than a business. It was the heart of our life, the place where we poured our love and our flour. Then Mark got sick. It was fast, a brutal thief that stole him from me and our daughter, Lily, in less than 6 months. The medical bills came after, a tidal wave of paper that swallowed our savings, our bakery, our home, and our future. Just like that, our wide-open world became this tiny, cramped box on the 4th floor of a rundown building. Now, my life was a constant, grueling calculation. A game of numbers where I was always losing. $3 for milk and bread, or save it for the electricity bill. Buy Lily a new pair of socks because hers had holes, or use the money for bus fare to a job interview. Every single day was a tightrope walk over a pit of failure. But today felt different. Today there was a tiny, fragile flicker of hope. I had an interview. Not just any interview, but for a position as an administrative assistant at a proper downtown firm. It was a real job with a real salary. It was a lifeline. A chance to stop drowning and finally breathe. I looked at my reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror. My face was thinner than it used to be, with dark circles under my eyes that soap and water couldn't wash away. They were etched there by worry. My hair was pulled back in a severe bun, the only style that could tame the frizz. The real problem was my clothes. I had nothing. Nothing that said competent professional, hire me. My wardrobe consisted of worn-out jeans and faded t-shirts, the ghosts of a life I no longer lived. Lily, honey, I'm going out for a little bit, I called, my voice trying for a cheerfulness I didn't feel. Lily, my sweet, resilient 6-year-old, was sitting on the floor, coloring a picture of a sun that was bigger than the house it was shining on. Okay, Mommy, can you bring back a chocolate bar? Her small request felt like a punch to the gut. A chocolate bar was a luxury, $1 I couldn't spare. We'll see, sweetie. I have to be smart with our money today. She just nodded, already accustomed to that answer. That acceptance, more than anything, broke my heart. My mission was to go to the Goodwill a few blocks away. It was my only hope. I had exactly $7 in my pocket, saved over 2 weeks by eating less so Lily could eat more. As I walked, I clutched the crumpled bills in my hand, a silent prayer running through my mind. Please, let there be something. Just one thing. The store smelled of dust and other people's lives. I navigated the packed racks, the hangers screeching in protest. My fingers brushed against scratchy wool, slippery polyester, and worn thin cotton. I felt a familiar wave of shame wash over me. I used to shop in boutiques, places where clothes smelled new and the mirrors were kind. Now I was searching for someone else's cast-offs, hoping for a miracle, and then I saw it, tucked between a garish floral jacket and a stained men's shirt, was a simple cream-colored blouse. It was silk, or at least it felt like it. It had a modest neckline and delicate little buttons. It was perfect. It was elegant. It was everything I wasn't feeling, but everything I needed to be. I checked the
tag.
$4. A surge of relief so powerful it made me dizzy washed over me. I had enough. I rushed to the fitting room, a cramped little cubicle with a warped mirror. I slipped the blouse on. For a moment, looking at my reflection, I saw a glimpse of the old me. The woman who owned a business, who had a husband who didn't count every penny. It fit perfectly. As I was turning, admiring how it fell, my heart sank. There on the side, almost hidden in a fold of the fabric, was a small, faint stain. It looked like a coffee drop, a pale brown ghost on the cream background. I tried to rub it with my thumb, but it was set in deep tears pricked my eyes. Of course! It was too good to be true. I stood there for a long moment, the blouse feeling like a cruel joke. But what choice did I have? It was this, or a faded shirt. I could try to hide the stain. Maybe if I held my arm a certain way, no. One would notice. I paid the $4, my hand trembling slightly as I handed over the cash. I bought a loaf of bread with the remaining money, foregoing the milk. I would tell Lily the store was out of her chocolate. Another small lie in a life that was starting to feel full of them. The next morning, the day of the interview, I was a bundle of nerves. I washed the blouse by hand in the sink, scrubbing gently at the stain, but it wouldn't budge. I ironed it, carefully trying to make it look as crisp and new as possible. I put it on, positioning my worn-out black trousers to their best advantage. I stood in front of the mirror, holding my left arm close to my side to hide the small brown imperfection. "You look beautiful, Mommy," Lily said, her voice full of genuine admiration. I knelt and hugged her tight, burying my face in her hair. "Thank you, my love. Wish me luck. Good luck, Mommy." She chirped. Her belief in me was the only armor I had. I took a deep breath and walked out the door, my resume tucked into an old folder, my heart hammering against my ribs. The firm was on the other side of town, in a neighborhood of glass towers, gleaming cars, and people who walked with a purpose. I envied. It was a different universe. The air even seemed to smell different here, cleaner, sharper, tinged with the scent of money and success. I was so focused on not being late, on rehearsing my answers in my head, that I wasn't paying full attention to the sidewalk. As I rounded a corner, a woman walking towards me, staring down at her phone, veered suddenly. We collided, not hard, but enough to make me stumble. My folder flew from my hands, the single page of my resume fluttering to the ground. "Oh, I'm so sorry," I stammered, bending down to retrieve it. "Watch where you're going," a voice snapped, as sharp and cold as breaking ice. I looked up. The woman was the epitome of everything I wasn't. She was tall and slender, dressed in a sleek, dark gray suit that probably cost more than my rent for a year. Her hair was a perfect sheet of blonde, her makeup flawless. A wave of expensive perfume, something floral and overpowering, washed over me. She held a designer handbag in the crook of her arm as if it were a small, precious animal. "I really am sorry," I said again, my face flushing with embarrassment as I stood up, clutching my resume. Her eyes, a pale, chilly blue, raked over me from head to toe. It wasn't a glance. It was an assessment, an appraisal. And I was found wanting. Her lip curled in a tiny, almost imperceptible sneer. "You should be," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. She took a half step back, as if I might contaminate her. I just wanted to disappear. I started to step around her, my one goal to get away from her piercing, judgmental gaze. But then her eyes narrowed, fixing on a point on my side. On my blouse. "Oh, for heaven's sake," she said, her voice louder now, laced with disgust. "You come into a decent part of town, and you can't even be bothered to wear clean clothes?" My blood ran cold. She had seen it. The stain. I instinctively tried to cover it with my hand, a useless, pathetic gesture. I couldn't form a sentence. My throat had closed up. She let out a short, cruel laugh. It wasn't a sound of amusement. It was a weapon. "Look at you. It's really quite pathetic. People like you just don't try, do you? You expect the world to hand you everything, but you can't even manage basic hygiene. People like you." The words hung in the air between us, heavy and poisonous. They weren't just about the stain on my blouse. They were about my worn shoes, my tired face, my cheap trousers. They were about my poverty. She had looked at me and seen everything I was ashamed of, everything I was desperately trying to hide. And she had put it on display for anyone on the busy street to see. My eyes started to burn with tears of pure, hot humiliation. I could feel the stares of passers-by. I was a spectacle. A poor woman being told off by a rich one. A cliché playing out in real life, and I was the punchline. "That's not fair," I whispered, the words barely audible. "You don't know anything about me. I know what I see," she retorted, flicking an imaginary piece of dust from her perfect suit. "And I see someone who is a mess. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have important things to do. Try not to bump into anyone else." With a final, dismissive glare, she turned and walked away, her heels clicking in arrogant rhythm on the pavement. I stood there, frozen. The world around me seemed to fade into a dull gray blur. The sounds of the city, the cars, the people, all of it became a distant hum. The only thing that was real was the gaping, ragged hole she had just torn in my chest. All the fragile hope I had built up, all the courage I had scraped together, it all crumbled into dust. She hadn't just insulted my clothes. She had insulted my struggle, my effort, my very existence. She had confirmed my deepest, darkest fear, that I was worthless. The tears I had been holding back finally broke free. A sob escaped my lips, and I quickly clamped a hand over my mouth. I couldn't stand there. I couldn't let anyone else see me like this. I turned and ran. I ran without knowing where I was going, my vision blurred by tears, the cruel sound of her laughter echoing in my ears. I ran past the gleaming glass tower where my interview was supposed to be. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs ached. I ran away from the woman, from the job, from the hope that now felt like a foolish dream. I found myself on a small, quiet side street, and I collapsed onto a cold metal bench, burying my face in my hands. The shame was a physical weight, pressing down on me, suffocating me. She was right. I was a mess. What was I thinking? That a stained, second-hand blouse could somehow transform me? That I could walk into that shiny office and pretend to be someone I wasn't? The interview was in 10 minutes. I couldn't go, not now. My face was blotchy. My eyes were red and swollen. My spirit was broken. I couldn't face a potential employer looking and feeling like this. I had been defeated by a $4 blouse and a stranger's casual cruelty. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, watching the sky turn a mournful shade of gray. A light drizzle began to fall, the cold drops mixing with the hot tears on my cheeks. It felt fitting. The weather was matching my mood. The lifeline was gone. I would have to go home to my daughter, with no job and no chocolate bar, and tell her that mommy had failed. Again, after a long time, my sobs subsided into a hollow ache. I got up, my body feeling heavy and old. The walk home felt 10 times longer. I took the back streets, avoiding the main roads, not wanting to see anyone. I just wanted to crawl back into my little box and disappear. The rain was coming down harder now, a steady, miserable downpour. I pulled my thin trousers tighter around me, but they were already getting soaked. As I was about to cross a street, I heard it, a sound that cut through the rhythmic drumming of the rain. The high-pitched, desperate screech of tires on wet asphalt, followed by a sickening crunch of metal and the explosive shatter of glass. It was close. Just around the next corner. My first instinct was to keep walking, to mind my own business. My capacity for dealing with anything else today was zero. I was empty. But some deep, primal instinct made me stop. The sound was too violent, too final. I hesitated for only a second before I started running again. But this time I was running towards the chaos, not away from it. I rounded the corner and my breath caught in my throat. A sleek silver car, a Mercedes. I noticed with a detached part of my brain was wrapped around a traffic light pole. The front end was completely crumpled, like a crushed soda can. Steam was hissing from under the mangled hood. The driver's side door was bent at a horrifying angle, and the windshield was a spiderweb of cracks. My heart pounded in my ears. People were starting to gather, pointing, pulling out their phones. But no one was moving towards the car. They were keeping their distance as if it were a dangerous animal. I moved closer, peering through the rain and the shattered glass. And then I saw her, the driver. It was the woman. The woman who had ripped my soul to shreds not an hour earlier. Her perfect blonde hair was matted with blood that trickled from a gash on her forehead. Her face, pale as a sheet, was contorted in pain and fear. Her eyes, those same chilly blue eyes, were wide with terror. Her sleek gray suit was torn, and one arm was bent at an unnatural angle. She was trapped, pinned by the buckled dashboard. A wave of something dark and ugly washed over me. Karma, the word flashed in my mind, hot and satisfying. A bitter smile touched my lips. She got what she deserved. The woman who looked down on everyone else was now brought low, bleeding and broken. In her expensive car. I could just turn around. Walk away. No one would know. It would be her just desserts. The universe had served its cold, hard justice. I actually took a step back. The anger and humiliation she had caused were still so raw, so fresh.
The memory
of her cruel laughter echoed in my head. Why should I help her? She wouldn't have lifted a finger for me. She wouldn't have even seen me as a human being worth helping. But then a different memory surfaced. The memory of sitting by Mark's hospital bed, watching the machines breathe for him. The memory of that same terror I now saw in her eyes. The raw, primal fear of someone whose life is suddenly, violently slipping from their grasp. I looked at her again, and I didn't see the rich woman in the designer suit anymore. I didn't see the arrogant sneer or the judgmental eyes. I saw a person. A scared, bleeding, broken person who was in desperate need of help. I saw a human being just as fragile and vulnerable as anyone else. As fragile as me. In that moment, the anger drained away, replaced by something else. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. Somebody call 911. I yelled at the crowd of onlookers, my voice sharp and commanding. A few people startled and fumbled with their phones. I rushed to the car door, pulling at the handle. It was jammed shut. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" I shouted, my voice loud to cut through her panic in the rain. Her eyes focused on me. For a second, there was no recognition. Just fear, then a flicker. I saw her realize who I was. Her expression shifted from terror to a complex mix of confusion and disbelief. "You," she whispered, her voice a ragged gasp. "Don't try to talk?" I said, my voice softening. "Help is on the way." "My name is Sarah. What's your name?" I needed to keep her conscious. I remembered the paramedics telling me that with Mark. Keep them talking. Keep them tethered to the world. "Evelyn," she breathed. "Okay, Evelyn, just stay with me. Try to take slow breaths." "Can you feel your legs?" She let out a pained whimper and shook her head slightly. I can't move." Panic was starting to cloud her eyes again. "That's okay," I said, trying to sound much calmer than I felt. "The dashboard has you pinned. The paramedics will have special tools to get you out. They're professionals. They do this all the time." The rain was plastering my hair to my face, and the cream-colored blouse, the source of all this misery, was soaked through and clinging to my skin. But I didn't care. I reached a hand through the shattered part of the window, careful to avoid the jagged edges of glass. "Can I hold your hand?" I asked. She stared at my outstretched hand for a moment. My hand, with its unmanicured nails and chapped skin. It was the hand of a woman who worked, who worried, who scrubbed floors and cooked cheap meals. It was a world away from her own pampered hands. After a beat of hesitation, she gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. I gently took her hand. It was ice cold. I wrapped my fingers around hers, holding on firmly but gently. "It's going to be okay, Evelyn," I said, looking her straight in the eye. "I'm not going to leave you." And I meant it. In that moment, our earlier encounter felt like it had happened a lifetime ago to two different people. All that mattered was the here and now. The rain, the hissing steam, the approaching wail of sirens, and the fragile human connection of my hand holding hers. I talked to her about nothing in particular. The weather, the color of the sky, anything to keep her mind off the pain and the fear. I told her the sirens were getting closer, that help was almost there. And through it all, she just stared at me, her blue eyes filled with a dawning, terrible understanding. The woman she had mocked, the pathetic mess she had dismissed, was now her only anchor in a world that had just been torn apart. The paramedics arrived and took over with practiced efficiency. They used the jaws of life to pry the door open, the sound a monstrous groan of tortured metal. They were calm, professional, and kind. I only let go of Evelyn's hand when they needed me to step back so they could get her onto a backboard. As they loaded her into the ambulance, her eyes found mine one last time. She tried to say something, but all that came out was a choked sob. A police officer came over to me, a notepad in his hand. "Ma'am, you were the first one on the scene?" "Yes," I said, my voice hoarse. "Did you see what happened?" "No, I just heard the crash." He took my statement, my name, my address, and my phone number. I was shivering, not just from the cold and the wet, but from the adrenaline crash. The officer looked at me, at my soaked clothes and pale face. "You were very brave. You did a good thing here today." I just nodded, unable to speak. A good thing. It didn't feel like a good thing or a bad thing. It just felt like the only thing I could have done. As the ambulance pulled away, its lights flashing silently in the rain, I was left standing on the sidewalk, alone again. The crowd had dispersed. The tow truck was already on its way. I looked down at myself. My blouse was ruined, stained with rain and grime, and I could have sworn I saw a tiny speck of Evelyn's blood on my cuff. I finally turned and walked home, the exhaustion hitting me like a physical blow. The interview, the insult, the crash. It all swirled in my head in a confusing, emotional jumble. I walked back into my apartment, and Lily ran to me. "Mommy, you're all wet." I knelt and hugged her, the simple, warm reality of her grounding me. "How was the job?" she asked, her eyes wide. I looked at her sweet, innocent face. "It's a long story, honey," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "But I think I did something important today." I didn't get a chocolate bar, but that night I held my daughter a little tighter, my heart filled with a strange, tumultuous peace. I had lost a job opportunity, but I had found a piece of myself I thought I had lost forever, the part that was strong, the part that was kind, the part that could look into the face of someone's pain, even the pain of an enemy, and offer a hand. And somehow that felt worth more than any job. The next few days passed in a gray haze. I fell back into my routine of job hunting, of stretching every dollar, but something had shifted inside me. The shame was still there, a dull ache in the background, but it was no longer all-consuming. The encounter with Evelyn, both parts of it, had changed my perspective. Then, on a Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, assuming it was a debt collector. "Hello?" I said cautiously. "Am I speaking with Sarah Miller?" a man's voice asked. It was a deep, calm voice. "Yes, this is she." Ms. Miller, my name is Robert. Davies, I'm Evelyn's husband. My heart leaped into my throat. I sat down heavily on the edge of my worn-out sofa. Oh, is she okay? She will be, he said, and I could hear the exhaustion in his voice. She has a broken arm, 3 cracked ribs, and a severe concussion. She's banged up, but the doctors say she make a full recovery. It could have been much, much worse. There was a pause. The officer at the scene said you were with her. That? You stayed with her until the ambulance arrived. Yes, I did. Evelyn told me. She told me what happened before the accident, he said, and his voice was heavy with a different kind of pain now. Embarrassment. She told me what she said to you. I didn't know what to say. I see. There is no excuse for her behavior, Miss Miller, none at all. I am so profoundly sorry for the way she treated you. What you did for her after what she did to you. It's a level of grace I'm not sure I would have been capable of. Tears pricked my eyes again, but this time they were different. They weren't from humiliation, but from a strange sort of validation. She was scared, I said simply. Anyone would have helped. No, he said firmly. Not everyone would have. My wife, Evely, and she can be difficult. Her upbringing was competitive. She was taught that you have to be hard to get ahead, that vulnerability is weakness. She builds walls around herself. But what you did broke through one of those walls. She's been asking for you. Asking for me, I was stunned. She wants to apologize. But more than that, I want to thank you. You saved her life. Not just by calling for help, but by keeping her calm. The paramedics said she was remarkably stable for a trauma victim, and they credited you. He cleared his throat. I would like to offer you a reward for your bravery and your kindness. The old me, the desperate me from a week ago, would have jumped at the offer, but I wasn't that same person. Thank you, Mr. Davies, but I can't accept that. I didn't do it for a reward. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. The officer gave me your details, he said finally. He also found your resume at the scene.
He put it in an evidence bag for you. He paused again.
It says on your resume that you and your late husband used to own a bakery. Yes, we did. I own a company, Miss Miller, a small chain of cafes called The Daily Grind. We pride ourselves on a welcoming atmosphere, good coffee and fresh baked goods. One of our managers just gave her notice. It's a good position. Salary benefits the whole package. My breath hitched. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Not offering you charity, he said quickly, as if reading my mind. I'm offering you an interview. Your resume is impressive. Your experience is exactly what we look for. And your character. Well, your actions last week speak for themselves. That's the kind of person I want managing my team. Someone who is decent and strong, even under pressure. The world tilted on its axis. This was it. Not just a lifeline, but a whole new ship. A chance to get back to the world I loved, the world of coffee and pastries, of serving people and making them happy. I would like that very much, Mr. Davies, I stammered, my voice thick with unshed tears. Please, he said, and for the first time his voice warmed up. Call me Robert. 6 months later, I was standing behind the counter of the Daily Grind, but I wasn't serving coffee. I was watching my team, a group of bright, wonderful young people, as they handled the morning rush. The cafe smelled of roasted coffee beans, cinnamon, and melting chocolate. It smelled like home. I had my own apartment now, a sunny 2-bedroom place with a small balcony where I was growing basil in a pot. Lily was thriving in her new school. She could have a chocolate bar whenever. She wanted one, though she rarely asked. She was happy just knowing that we were safe. That we were okay. The bell above the door chimed, and I looked up. A woman walked in, leaning heavily on a cane. Her blonde hair had grown out a bit, and she wore it in a simple, unstyled way. She wore no makeup, and a thin, white scar ran from her hairline to her eyebrow. She looked older, more fragile. It was Evelyn. Our eyes met across the busy cafe. Her face was a mixture of nerves and resolve. She walked slowly towards the counter. My heart gave a little flutter, but it wasn't fear or anger. It was just surprise. "Hello, Sarah," she said, her voice quiet. "Evelyn," I replied, my voice steady. "How are you feeling?" "Better," she said, gesturing to her cane. "Still a work in progress. Physical therapy is a nightmare." She gave a weak, self-deprecating smile. It was the first time I had ever seen her look anything other than arrogant. "I'm glad you're recovering," I said, and I meant it. An awkward silence fell between us. A customer came to the register, and I excused myself to ring them up. When I turned back, Evelyn was still there, waiting patiently. "I never got to thank you," she said, her gaze fixed on the floor. "Or to apologize properly." She finally lifted her eyes to meet mine. They were still blue, but the icy chill was gone. Now they just looked tired and sad. "What I said to you that day, it was monstrous. There's no excuse for it. I was cruel because it made me feel powerful, and I'm so sorry. I can't imagine how much I hurt you." I looked at this woman, this ghost of the person who had tried to shatter me, and I felt a surprising wave of pity. Her wealth and her power hadn't protected her. In the end, they meant nothing when her car was wrapped around a pole. "I accept your apology, Evelyn," I said. Relief washed over her features. "Thank you," she whispered, "and thank you for not leaving me there. You had every reason to walk away." I think about that every single day. "You were hurt," I said. "That's all I saw." She nodded slowly, absorbing that. "My husband told me he hired you." "I'm glad. He said you're the best manager he's ever had." "I love the job," I said, a genuine smile spreading across my face. "It's given me my life back." We stood there for another moment, two women from different worlds, bound together by one horrible, transformative day. The animosity was gone, replaced by a quiet, somber understanding. We would never be friends, but we were no longer enemies. "Can I get you a coffee?" I asked. "It's on the house." A real smile, small but genuine, touched her lips. "I'd like that very much." As I turned to make her a latte, I caught my reflection in the polished chrome of the espresso machine. I saw a woman with a confident smile and kind eyes. The dark circles were gone. I was no longer the woman in the stained blouse. I was Sarah Miller, manager of the Daily Grind, a mother, a survivor. I had been mocked for being poor, for an imperfection on a piece of clothing. But in the end, it was an imperfection in her own life, a moment of violent, random chance that led to my salvation. Karma, maybe. Or perhaps it was just life in all its cruel, beautiful, and unpredictable mischances. And I had learned that sometimes the very thing that is meant to break you can be the thing that ultimately makes you whole again.